What's going on, y'all? Let's get started on our retake. So here it says, for part of a science experiment, Andre adds 0 and 25 hundredths milliliters of dye to 2 and 3/10 milliliters of water. How many milliliters does the mixture contain? Well, we see here that it says adds. So what you should know is that you're going to add this onto the 12 and 3/10 milliliters. And so when we're adding or subtracting decimals, what we need to know is that we need to make sure that our decimals are lined up. For instance, 12 and 3/10. I know I need to line up the 0, the ones place. Our decimals should always be aligned like so. And then we do our 25 hundredths and then add like normal. So what I know is I can add a 0 at the end of my decimal to make it look pretty. 0 plus 5 is 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. Bring down our decimal, and then 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 plus 0 is 1. So our answer is 12 and 55 hundredths. And so what we can say is the mixture contains, right? The mixture contains, got that from there, 12 and 55 hundredths milliliters. I know this because 12 and 3/10 plus 0 and 25 hundredths is 12 and 55 hundredths. And that's all you had to do for this one, is you add them up. And then for question 2, it says select all the expressions that are greater than 3. And so you're just solving all these equivalent expressions. And so 1 and 67 hundredths plus 1 and 4/10, right? We see that we're lining up our decimals. 7, 0, 1, bring down our decimal. 3 and 7/10, so you know that's the case. We go for this one, 2 and 97 hundredths plus 0 and 4 thousandths. Add your 0. And what we can see here, it's almost 3. It's almost 3, but it's not greater than 3. It's 2 and 974 thousandths. So you know that's not it. Go here. 3 and 17 thousandths minus 0 and 5 hundredths. And so you add your decimal, your 0. 7 minus 0 is 7. You can't do 1 minus 5, so you have to regroup the 3. And so you regroup this 10 to make this an 11. 11 minus 5 is 6. Bring down your 9. You can see that this is less than 3. We go to our last one, 4 and 5/10 minus 1 and 47 hundredths. You see I'm always lining up my decimals. So you can't do 0 minus 7, right? I added that 0. And so regroup, make this a 10. 10 minus 7 is 3. 4 minus 4 is 0. Bring down our decimal. This is greater than 3. Then finally, for our last one, 5 and 500 in 3 thousandths, we're subtracting. 3 minus 0 is 3. Regroup our 4. This is 8. And so 14 minus 5 is 9. All we did was we regrouped. 4 minus 2 is 2. And this is less than 3. And so those were our two answers. And so what you guys need to watch out for is when to regroup, right? If your number is smaller on top, you're going to have to regroup from the left side. Let's move on to our next one. All right, so here we have one way to compute a 15% tip for a bill is to multiply by 0 and 15 hundredths. A restaurant bill was $42.40. Calculate the tip, explain your reasoning. And so this already tells you what to do. You need to multiply your bill by your 15%. And one way to get 15% of a bill is by doing $42.40 times 0 and 15 hundredths. So that's what we can do here. And so our first step when multiplying decimals is we need to keep track of our place value. And so what we can see here is that the 0 terminates in the hundredths place. So we have 2 place values there. Here, the 15 hundredths also terminates in the hundredths place, so that's another 2 place values. And so altogether, we have 4 that we're going to have to bring back into our product. And so we start 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Regroup our 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. Bring down our 1. 5 times 4 is 20. Plus 1 is 21. Now we're done with our 5. And so we can cross that out and move over a place value to our 1. When we move over a place value, we always add a placeholder. Now we multiply. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 4 is 4. Notice how everything is lined up. And finally, if you guys want, we can go to our next place value of the 0. So we do 2 placeholders when we move over twice. And anything times 0 is 0. And so 1 times 0, 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. Then you just add. So here we have 0, 0, 6, 3, 6. And so what we saw is that we had 4 place values up top. So that means we move over to the left 4 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's equivalent of multiplying by 10,000. Well, dividing by 10,000. That was close. So we went to the left, and when you go to the left, it's the same as dividing by 10,000. So what we can say is they tipped $6.36. I know this because 15% of $42.40 is $6.36. And then you can say I got this because I did 42 and 40 tenths. 40 hundredths times 0 and 15 hundredths, and so forth. For question 4, a runner is preparing for a marathon that is cut into 5 equal sections. The marathon is 42 and 195 thousandths kilometers. How long is each section of the marathon? And so since we're splitting into equal groups, this should tell us that it's division. And so it's 42 and 195 thousandths divided by 5. So we can set that up here. And so our dividend goes inside, our divisor goes on the outside, and now we just divide like normal. And so if you don't remember your 5 facts, you can do your multiples on the side here, right? Take your time to write your multiples if that's what you need, if you don't have a multiplication chart. This is the strategy that you guys can do. And so 5 goes into 4. Well, 5 is bigger than 4, so it goes in 0 times. 5 goes into 42. Well, if you count it up, you'd see it goes in 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. Now we subtract. 42 minus 40 is 2. We can bring up our decimal. Bam. And so when you get to your decimal, you want to bring it up and then bring down your next number. And what's really cool is since this is multiple choice, you see how this is 8 and then a decimal? There's only one answer that has 8 and a decimal. So you know that, right? This one would be your answer because we're already starting our division. If you're confident in your division and you see that you're doing it right, you already know your answer has to be this because it's the only one that has 8 in a decimal. And so now 5 goes into 21, right? 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Then you subtract. Bring down your 9 for 19. 5 goes into 19 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. You subtract. 19 minus 15 is 4. Bring down your 5. 5 goes into 45 9 times. And then you're done. And what you can see is, right, the answer that we got here is the same that we have here. And if you were off by a little bit, the good thing about multiple choice is just go to the one that is closest to the answer that you have. All right, let's go to our next one. All right, so for question 5, what is the closest quotient to 5,278 divided by 0 and 5 hundredths? And so this one actually has a decimal divisor. And so what we know when we have a decimal divisor is we need to make it into a whole number. And so you do that by multiplying it by the place value it terminates in. So 0 and 5 hundredths terminates in the hundredths place. So to make it a whole number, we multiply it by 100. And so if I multiply my divisor by 100, I can multiply my dividend by 100. So it moves the place value over 2. And so then we have 527,800 divided by 5. And so quickly, if you guys wanted to get your answer, you could just multiply the two ones you multiplied by, which is 100,000. That's a quick way to answer it. And so you know that this one's going to be your answer when you're done. And so if I was to do this out, right, we can see that 5 times 100,000 would be close to 500,000, and then you would be done. But that's the initial step that you had to do. I trust that you guys can do long division on your own. If you needed more help with that, look on to question 6 of the video, or look at the question that we just did on the last page. All right, so now for question 6. So 3 different bakeries sells muffin for different prices. Find the unit price to the nearest cents. And so that means it wants it to the nearest dollar, and show your reasoning. And so hint, unit price means the cost of one muffin. And so for instance, if I bought 6 muffins for $12, it would cost, each one muffin would cost $2. Why? Because $12 divided by the 6 is 2. And so to get your unit price, you do the cost divided by your the amount you bought. So this would be $25 divided by 12. Here, $46 divided by 24. And then finally, $50 divided by 94. And so bakery A, right, 12 goes into 25 2 times. 2 times 12 is 24. And so now 25 minus 24 is 1. And so we have nothing left to carry down. This is where you want to bring your decimal and put it up and then add a 0. It doesn't change the value. You bring it down. 12 goes into 10 0 times. Add another 0 now, right? You only add a 0 in your dividend if you brought a number down and you see that your number goes in 0 times. So what you could do actually is 0 times 12 is 0. Bring down your 10. And now bring down your next 0. 12 goes in 100 8 times, and so you get 96, and then you get 4. So what's really cool is this wants it to the nearest cent, and we know dollars are only $2.08, right? You can actually stop here. So the bakery, each muffin is about $2.08. For bakery B, we do the same concept, 46, 24. Right? And so 24 goes into 46. Well, 2 times 24 is 48. So that means it only goes in one time. 1 times 24 is 24. Now you subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. And so I have nothing left to carry down, which means I can add my decimal and bring it up, and then add a 0. Do you guys notice how I'm adding a 0 to the dividend? Right? This is the dividend inside. I'm not adding it to my quotient. A lot of people added zeros to their quotient randomly. You only want to add zeros into your dividend, and the only time that you put a 0 in your quotient is in this case where 12 went into 10 0 times. And so how many times is 24 going to 220? Right? This is where you use estimation to figure this out. For instance, 24 times 10 is 240. And so it's a safe bet that since I know 24 times 10 is 240, maybe I try multiplying this by 9 to see if it fits. And so I do 24 times 9. 9 times 4 is 36. Regroup my 3. 9 times 2 is 18. Plus 3 is 21. And so what we do see is that it does go in 9 times. So 9 times 24 is 216. 220 minus 216, right, gives us 4. Bring down another 0. 24 goes into 40 one time. You subtract, and you end up getting 16. And so again, we end at the nearest cent, just like it said. So this is $1.91. And finally, we do 50. Ooh, I did this one backwards. So it was $94 divided by 50. Right? 50 muffins for $94. So 50 goes into 94 one time. You subtract. Again, nothing left to carry down, so we add our decimal and bring it up, and then add a 0. Another opportunity where I added the 0 inside, right? Inside our dividend, not in our quotient. 50 goes into 448 times. Now you can subtract 440 minus 40. 400 is 40. Bring down our 0. 50 goes into 408 times. And you end up getting $1.88. So which option is the lowest price? Well, bakery C has the lowest price at $1.88. I know this because bakery A sells for $2.08 per muffin, and bakery B sells for $1.91 per muffin. As a result, $1.88 is the cheapest. And so, right, you guys are getting pretty good at explaining your reasoning. You don't need to copy exactly my reasoning. You guys can do your own. But as we see here, $1.88 is the cheapest after our math. And you just explain that with your words, making sure to put the prices of bakery A and B into your reasoning. All right, time for our last question. All right, so here we have a stack of 200 file folders is 5 and 125 thousandths inches tall. And so the 200 file folders is the groups, so that's our divisor, right? We have 200 groups, and the total height of it is going to be your dividend. And so Elena guesses that each folder is 35 thousandths inches thick. Explain how you know. And so you can, this is her quotient. She's saying this is her quotient, by the way. And how you can check if your quotient's right is by multiplying your quotient with your divisor. And so you do 0 and 35 thousandths times 200. And so you keep track of your decimals. There's 3, right? Anything times 0 is 0. And so now we finished these two zeros, right? We sped through that because anything times 0 is 0. And now you do 2, right? You moved over 2 place values. 2 times 5 is 10. Regroup your 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Then you add. And then we add our 3 place values back. And so since 7 does not equal 5 and 125 inches, she is wrong. She would say, I disagree with Elena because 0 and 35 hundredths times 200 is 7 inches, not 5 and 125 thousandths inches. And so finally, compute the actual distance, thickness. And so you do 5 and 125 thousandths and 200 on the left. 200 goes into 5 0 times, bring up our decimal. 200 goes into 1 0 times. 200 goes into 512 2 times. 512 minus 400 gives us 112. Carry down our 5. 200 goes into 1,125 5 times, right? And so we're just doing our division. If you need help with division, you can go on to the next page. 200 times goes into this 6 times, right? And so we're just doing our division. 200 goes into 500 2 times. And then finally, 200 goes into 1,000 5 times, and we're done. So we would say the thickness is 0.025 inches. And then I know this because, and then you explain your reasoning. And again, if you need help with the long division portion, go to a prior question. Good job.